you need to eat properly. It almost sounds as if humans were designed to eat exactly 3 times a day. But here's the surprising part. For most of human history, people did not consistently eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. This habit is not as ancient as it seems. And once you discover where it came from, you may start looking at your own eating schedule in a completely different way. Before clocks existed. Imagine living 20,000 years ago. There are no clocks, no school bells, no office hours, no refrigerators. You wake up when the sun rises. You eat when food is available. Some days a hunting group returns with meat. Some days people gather berries, roots, nuts, or fish. Other days food is scarce. Anthropologists who study hunter-gatherer societies have found that eating patterns were often irregular. People did not always consume food at fixed times. A successful hunt might lead to a large meal. A difficult day might mean very little food until the next opportunity appeared. In other words, eating was connected to food availability, not to a strict daily timetable. This makes sense from an evolutionary perspective. Our ancestors evolved in environments where food was unpredictable. The human body became remarkably good at handling periods of feasting and fasting. That does not mean starvation was healthy. It means that our biology developed flexibility rather than dependence on a perfectly scheduled breakfast at 8 o'clock, lunch at 1 o'clock, and dinner at 7 o'clock. So where did the fixed schedule begin? The first major change came with agriculture. When farming changed. Everything around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago, humans in several parts of the world began cultivating crops and domesticating animals. This changed more than food production. It changed time itself. Farmers had seasons to follow: planting, watering, harvesting, storing grain. Daily work became more structured than the life of many hunter-gatherers. But even then, the familiar 3-meal pattern was not universal. In many ancient societies, people often ate 2 substantial meals, one later in the morning or around midday, another in the evening. Breakfast, as we think of it today, was frequently small, optional, or even considered unnecessary. For example, in parts of ancient Greece and Rome, the main meals were usually later in the day, and morning eating was often modest. So agriculture created more regularity, but it still did not fully create the modern breakfast, lunch, dinner system. Another force would shape mealtimes in a powerful way: social class. The rich ate differently. Throughout the Middle Ages in Europe, meal patterns varied dramatically depending on wealth and occupation. Peasants who worked physically demanding jobs often ate whenever work and available food allowed. Nobles, however, turned meals into social events. Large midday feasts became displays of status and power. Over time, eating schedules became associated with culture, etiquette, and class identity. Interestingly, the word breakfast literally means breaking the fast. After sleeping for many hours without food, any morning meal technically breaks a fast. But the existence of the word does not prove that everyone historically ate a large breakfast every day. For many centuries, breakfast was often relatively light. The idea that it is the most important meal of the day is actually much more recent than most people realize. And the biggest transformation happened during the Industrial Revolution. Factories needed schedules. In the 18th and 19th centuries, factories changed human life dramatically. Industrial workers could not simply stop working whenever they felt hungry. Factory owners needed fixed starting times, fixed breaks, predictable productivity. A structured workday encouraged structured eating. Workers typically needed food before work, food during a break in the middle of the day, food after returning home. This pattern maps almost perfectly onto breakfast before work, lunch during work, dinner after work. Once millions of people followed similar schedules, the pattern became deeply embedded in society. Schools adopted lunch breaks because children were being prepared for the same industrial time structure. Cities organized restaurant hours around worker demand. Families coordinated meals around shared working hours. In other words, the modern 3-meal system is not only about nutrition, it is also about synchronizing society. The breakfast myth. During the 20th century, breakfast received enormous promotional attention. Cereal companies, nutrition campaigns, and advertising frequently presented breakfast as essential for energy, concentration, productivity, health. Some of these claims contained elements of truth for certain people. Eating in the morning can help many individuals feel more alert and less hungry later. But the stronger claim, everyone must eat breakfast every day or they are unhealthy, is not strongly supported as a universal biological rule. Research shows that healthy eating patterns can exist with different meal frequencies: 3 meals, 2 meals, several smaller meals, or time-restricted eating patterns. The important factors are usually total nutrition, food quality, calorie balance, protein intake, sleep, and physical activity. Human bodies are surprisingly adaptable. Why 3 meals feel so natural? If 3 meals are partly historical and social, why do they feel so obvious? Because habits become invisible when an entire culture shares them. Think about language. You rarely notice the grammar rules of your native language while speaking. The same thing happens with meal schedules. From childhood, most people repeatedly experience breakfast before school, lunch at school, dinner with family. After thousands of repetitions, the pattern feels like common sense rather than a cultural convention. Your hunger hormones also adapt to regular eating times. If you usually eat lunch at 1300, your body may start increasing hunger signals around that time, even if the exact timing is not biologically mandatory. So, culture shapes routine, and routine gradually shapes expectation. What about other countries? Meal timing varies much more than many people realize. In Spain, dinner is often much later than in Northern Europe. In some Mediterranean cultures, lunch has historically been the largest meal. In parts of Asia, meal structure may differ significantly from the classic Western breakfast-lunch-dinner model. Some traditional societies include substantial snacks or additional meals between the main eating periods. If human biology truly required exactly 3 meals at fixed hours, these cultural variations would be much harder to sustain. The existence of many successful eating patterns suggests that humans possess considerable flexibility. So, how often should humans eat? This is the question everyone wants answered. The honest scientific answer is there is probably no single perfect number for everyone. Some people feel best with 3 balanced meals, stable energy levels, predictable hunger patterns. Others prefer 2 larger meals, a lighter morning, or eating within a shorter daily window. Athletes, growing teenagers, people with medical conditions, and individuals with physically demanding jobs may all have different nutritional needs. The key insight is that meal frequency is not a magical number. What matters more is whether the eating pattern provides adequate nutrients, supports energy and performance, is sustainable long-term, and fits the person's lifestyle. The strange conclusion. So let's return to the original question. Why do we eat 3 times a day? Not because ancient humans always did. Not because evolution programmed a universal 3-meal clock into our bodies. The modern pattern emerged from a long combination of agriculture creating more regular daily routines, social customs and class traditions, industrial factory schedules, school and workplace organization, and later cultural expectations reinforced by advertising and habit. In other words, breakfast, lunch, and dinner are not purely biological laws. They are historical habits that became cultural normality. That does not make them bad. For millions of people, the 3-meal pattern works perfectly well, but it does mean something important. The next time you look at a clock and think, it's lunchtime, remember that your hunger may be responding not only to your body, but also to thousands of years of changing human society. And that is what makes this ordinary daily habit so fascinating. A simple sandwich at noon is not just a meal. It is the result of evolution, farming, social status, factories, schools, and culture all working together to shape one of the most familiar routines in human life.